Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for part two of my 3 year anniversary celebration for my fanfiction journey of my favorites list on fanfiction.net. I'm just gonna dive right in since I've put these all together. So let's just go in, starting with The Fearful Void by EarthScorpion. This is a Familiar of Zero crossover with Fear, where Louise summons a child version of Alma. And basically, the two try to take care of each other while figuring out where Alma came from. It's not too bad, but it doesn't really go anywhere. There's a bunch of scenes where the two are getting a little closer, and a few where Alma uses her abilities, but overall, nothing really happens. Easily skippable. It's gonna fall off my list. After that, we have Good Morning by Monkey Bandit 2, which is a Evangelion crossover with Saints Row, where Shinji gets basically right after he gets abandoned by Gendo, gets adopted by the leader of the Syndicate gang from Saints Row 3, I believe, in the Saints Row series, and brings his crew with him when Gendo calls him at the start of EVA. There's some fun to be had with Shinji just pulling rocket launchers out of his ass to deal with the annoyances of Gendo and his bullshit, but it just doesn't get very far. It only gets up to the sixth angel before stopping, and there's no real catharsis to be found, as it really spends a lot of time setting up points of like how they're going to deal with Seal and stuff like that doesn't ever show up because the author stopped writing it. And there's nothing else really memorable aside from that like one scene where at the beginning where Shinji tells him no, and then Gendo goes to intimidate him with Section 2 thugs, and they just pull a rocket launcher to shoot at them from the elevator. Like, that's the only scene I remember in this story, and I don't remember much else of it. It's gonna fall off my list. Next is Live to Rise by Bones Boy 15, and this is a My Little Pony crossover with Naruto, where it's not really so basically Naruto joins Ponyville for the first fight against Nightmare Moon before the author stopped updating. Like, he's there for basically it starts like a couple days before season 1 of My Little Pony, where Naruto is coming back from a trip, I think, and then he just continues on through the first 2 episodes, and then basically I'll stop writing. It's kind of interesting because it meshes like Naruto's ninja world and backstory as part of the My Little Pony universe, like not as people, but as like just a ninja village of horses or ponies in part of Equestria. But nothing is really here. It's just preamble. You can read it. It's fine, but it's not interesting enough for really worth revisiting, and it's gonna fall off my list. Next is a complete fic for a change. We have Steve and the Barkeep by Runaway Deviant, and this is a Harry Potter crossover with the Avengers, which is just a bunch of small scenes where Harry and Steve become friends, and Harry just hangs out with the other Avengers. Like, it's not anything about fighting big bads or stuff like that. This is just, and I mean, that does happen occasionally. There are like fights happening in the middle, but that's not what the story focuses on. It's always either aftermath or like jumping around scenes, and it's always focusing about just Harry interacting with the heroes and just like chilling out. It's always nice, comfortable, and just like fun seeing the heroes act like teenagers and as they chill out and drink. It's nice, comfortable, complete. I enjoyed this a lot. It's gonna stay on my list. Moving on to another complete fanfic, we have A Darkened World by Sprinter 1988, and this is a pure Harry Potter fic that is a pretty decent war movie in actuality. Like, it's written and structured like a long form war movie, a la Saving Private Ryan or something, where it's like it starts. It's got one. It's all. It's 90%, 99% of it is basically one sequence of events with no time jumps, aside from the very beginning and then the epilogue. So it's setup is interesting. It follows a decent tale. The thing's great. The only little hiccup is the fact that the time jump is like the fact is like there's this starts with like during the Horcrux hunt where Ron left, and then this time Hermione went with him, and then it jumps like 20 years, and then it gets solved over the course of the rest of the story, which granted does take probably a year, but it makes it seem like okay, if they managed to solve it in a year, why was Harry just farting around for the past 20 years not doing shit? Like it feels like he was just wasting his time during that first bit, but the actual story and the actual events are interesting enough that like it wasn't a constant nag on the thing, and it really only came back and nitpicking me as an annoyance when I was almost done with the story. But I really think this is a pretty good war movie written down in a small book form that I would happily reread, and it's going to stay on my list. Coming back to the world of Familiar of Zero, we have Bloody Roulette by Lucaris, which is a Familiar of Zero Killer 7 crossover, where Louise summons a guy that shoots himself and turns Louise into a member of the Killer 7. And the story is basically a prologue with one small side story, and then the author stopped updating. The story handles up to the Guiche, I don't even know how to say it, Guiche debacle and Fouquet's capture before ending in a little meeting with some backstory of the groups. And there's some promise of conflict, and then it ends with nothing more than a bunch of what ifs. Like, it's interesting idea, but since nothing comes of it, it's nothing memorable, nothing truly interesting as a whole, story-wise, and it's going to fall off my list. And the final story for part 2 of my 3-year anniversary collection is The Perils of Innocence by Avid Bearer. And this is another Harry Potter only fic where basically Harry, Hermione, and a couple other Muggleborns end up meeting at a basically psychiatric institution because the parents send them there because they're too afraid of what's going on with magic and they don't understand, so they have them committed. This starts before Hogwarts, like main point starts like a year before they go to Hogwarts, and is mostly about the kids growing closer to each other while the adults are all confused about what's going on. The author did get a little into their first year at Hogwarts before stopping, and while I don't think it's bad, it's just not interesting to me. I'm pretty sure this got added to my list just because I came across it, and I'm a big Harry Hermione fan, and it just came across, and it was a long fix. So I was like, okay, it's long. There, I must like this. It's there, sure, but on the reread, like there was just nothing to really grab my attention or make me really get invested in this story. I don't think it's bad. I don't think the writing's bad. I just personally did not connect with this story. And so I would say give it a look, and maybe if you connect with like the first 2 or 3 chapters, you might like this a lot and continue on, even though it's unfinished. Granted, I mean, the guy was writing since last update was just last year, and I've seen updates, so you can kind of keep the hope alive, but I don't know. For me, it's gonna fall off my list, and that's the last one for this video. So quick fanfiction status for this video: we now have 773 stories read, and 369 of them will have stayed on my list. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you like this thing. Links to all the stories are in the description, and I will see you in part 3 of my 3-year anniversary. Take care.